So Jen, you are episode 7 of the Your Platform podcast.
Lucky number 7.
Lucky number 7.
All right.
I wanted to be one of the first people I reached out to because I think you gave me an opportunity in the insurance industry in 2015 with no experience, and throughout my years with you, I couldn't have had a better leader. So I wanted to bring you on to kind of discuss your leadership journey, kind of what you did beforehand. And just have some fun, candid talk, along the way. So just the kind of brief introduction of the Your Platform podcast, it highlights people like you, business professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners, giving them a platform to talk about, like I said, their journey. So we'll jump right in. I don't know much about kind of what you wanted to do when you grew up. Over the 8 years we've worked together, I know pretty much a lot of your professional life and whatnot. What did you want to do when you grew up?
So it was not being in the insurance industry. That was not a thing when little Jen was 5 years old. Funny enough, I probably wanted to be a background dancer for J-Lo when I was little. I mean, I don't know that I had a solid direction, but I loved just being out there dancing, singing. That was my thing. I love art. I'm into, makeup and hair. And so could I have been in Fashion Week at some point in New York City?
Yeah.
That all big dreams when you're a little kid, but definitely not the path that I got on.
Now you spent 18 years, going on 19, or is it 18? Almost 19 years in the industry, all with the same company.
Yeah.
That kind of tenure doesn't exist, specifically in our age demographic, right? I think we're considered millennials or whatnot, right?
Oh yeah,
millennials. So, that in itself and your success, kind of bring me through your journey. What you started doing, probably from sales rep to where you are now, kind of, and explain, some of the things that actually we'll jump into. But just give me the journey there.
Sure. So, I was at UConn, and like any college kid, they don't know what they want to do unless you have a path of, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be an engineer. I was doing general studies in the beginning. My dad was saying, hey, if you don't know what you want to do, get into the business school. So I applied to the business school, I got in, and during one of my marketing classes, they put out a sales program. And I love talking to people. I said, you know what, let me explore that. So I got into the sales program, and there was a series of classes there, and they had different companies coming in, just talking to us about what they do. ADP, Liberty Mutual was one of them, a couple of other places, medical device sales. Liberty Mutual came in, and I remember just listening to them, and the one thing that stuck out was the money that was made.
Of course.
And for me, it was a big motivator. I mean, I wanted my Louis Vuittons early on when I was a kid, and I wanted to get there by myself. Nobody's buying that stuff for me. So I applied to the internship, and I said, let me just see what this is about. I went to the interview, got hired on the spot. Which I think this was also just so natural for me.
Sure. It goes back to the J-Lo dancing.
It does. It goes back. Yeah. So I really I got hired on the spot. I became an intern, and I watched everything that everybody did. I watched what the high performers did, and I also watched what the low performers did. And that was a key indicator of, I said to myself, I could do this. Right. I could totally do this. Right. And I did. I became a sales rep for 2.5 years. I stayed very consistent. I did really well. And I got tapped on the shoulder. They came out with a training program. They said, listen, we want you to train the new people that are coming in. So I took it. I don't even know, 23 years old.
Wow.
I did that for about a year, and I knew I wanted to get into management. When I was working with those agents that I was training, working with the managers, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I became a manager at the young age of 25.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Because like I said, that's a big accomplishment. And you're very highly decorated, having worked for you, and the accolades and recognition that you have accomplished, and the team that you built, which we'll touch base about in a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
But I do want to dive into the leadership philosophy a little bit. I was doing a little research on leadership in itself, and staggering statistic. 79% of employees quit due to lack of appreciation and lack of leadership.
Yeah.
And on top of that, 83% of organizations think that they need to enforce programs to develop leadership from within, and only 5% of those businesses implement them.
Yeah.
And that's a staggering statistic considering where we are today from the insurance industry, trying to retain people and whatnot. You know me, I'm big on principle. I follow, whether it be discipline, consistency, from a leadership standpoint, what are some of the things that you made sure that you don't miss on these, principles for your work, personal life, as a parent? What are some things that, you make sure you stick to and,
Sure.
kind of.
So, biggest thing that I can think of is I see myself as a servant leader.
Mm-hmm.
My people are my people.
Right.
I work for them.
Right.
And I take care of them. And for me, it's first, I need to identify the right people
Mm-hmm.
to come on the team that have the same values, that have the same vision, that are aligned that way. I can't want something for somebody more than they want it for themselves. I learned that really early on. That was defeating. How can I not help people that are on the bottom and they're not moving the needle, right? So for me, it's transparent communication is a big one.
Mm.
Setting expectations. I set high expectations for the people around me.
I know that.
You know that firsthand. I do that because I set high expectations for myself, and I want to be around the same kind of like and quality people, because that rises everybody up at the end of the day from what I've seen. I also make very personal connections with my people. I know them. I know their families. They know me. They know my family. It's a very transparent two-way communication. I find out what motivates them. That's a big thing for me. So setting the bar high, I set those high expectations. My communication is through the roof. I'm as transparent as can be, but I'm also in the trenches with everyone.
What's the hardest part of it? Obviously, having worked for you, I see very, down here. I don't see the high level. What's the hardest part? How do you push through to kind of, for yourself, like, how can I get this person motivated? I know you and I sat down many times, like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? But when you look into you as a leader, what are some things that you think that stick out to you as to, how you move forward in that?
So I would say early on, like I mentioned, I always wanted to help the people on the bottom. Mm-hmm. And I learned from a mentor early on that, Jen, you have to spend 80% of your time with your top 20%. Mm-hmm. That was hard for me. Yeah. It was a hard thing to swallow, right? Once I started pouring in my resources to people that had that underlying skill set, everything grew from there. Right. And identifying whether, something's not a right fit for somebody, and that's okay. Right. There's no reason to fight it on either side of the wall. It's okay. I think that was really hard to swallow early on, because I know I have a gift. I can help everybody. Right. No, that's not where we're at. Right. You need the right people to be on your side and on your team. And at the end of the day, I don't teach effort.
Sure.
That's not where I'm at.
Right.
And so I almost have created this kind of caliber of, this is where I want things to be. And if you're ready to be a part of it and commit to it, I'm going to give you 150% of me. And my people know that. My team knows that.
I think mentorship, it's funny because I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, like a lot of people that I follow, the Patrick Bet-David, he's a PBD podcast. He talks about mentorship. Mm-hmm. He came from the insurance industry, and I thought, man, Jen was my mentor, and she still is. Like, the fact that I can still call you, and that's what you want, and I think that's why you have the team and the success that you had, is because you do foster that sense of, you're my, you work for me, but this is more of a family feel, and we go to war together.
Sure.
That's huge, specifically from a mentorship standpoint, because going back to that stat that 79% of employees quit because they don't feel appreciated. You give a little bit of mentorship, that's going to go a long way for your people. So, what you mentioned transparency, being able to communicate with your employees. As a leader, what other qualities do you think distinguish good leaders from great leaders?
So, I say great leaders have consistent communication, and know their people. And they fight for their people. Great leaders they're not telling people what to do.
Sure.
That's not what great leaders do. Right. Great leaders are behind their people, making sure that their people know how to do the job and what they need, their resources to do the job, and keep them understanding that they can keep moving even when they might not see that in themselves. Yeah. But also knowing how to motivate each individual person. Right. It's a difficult task. It really is.
Very difficult.
The way I talk to you is going to be very different from somebody else, right? Yeah. It's a very difficult task. And you cannot just use one style. It doesn't work like that. Right. I think when I think about great coaches and great leaders, they set a culture, they set a precedent of this is what this looks like. Gino Auriemma on the UConn basketball team, like, we don't teach effort on this team. He said it, and that stuck in my mind. I just said that a few minutes ago. We don't do that. Yeah. So the people know that they know they're coming on this team. That's what that is. I set my culture. Sure. I set where we are and who I want to be and what team this is going to look like. Yeah. And so we're finding individuals that they have to align with that, right? I have a strong respect for my people, and my agents know I have their back no matter what. I'm not going to let people fail that are giving me their all. Yeah. It's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. How do you balance, the authority of a branch manager, but at the same time trying to be empathetic to, the employees? I think over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, we've seen diminishing and diminishing mental health from a work standpoint, with that being burnout, kind of running that, the hamster wheel going and going. But at the end of the day, you're a leader, you're a branch manager. How do you separate the two? Like, at what point do you say, hey, listen, you do have a job to do?
Yeah, it's, that's a very difficult task. So when you think of, I did their job at the end of the day, but that was 19 years ago. Right. It's a totally different job today than it was then. But anytime I think about this, and the higher people go in an organization, sometimes you can see the disconnect. I consistently stay connected to what everybody's doing. And if we're trending where, there's problems or I see things going wrong, it's easy to point fingers and say, hey, you guys aren't doing this. Sure. Listen, everybody can see the scoreboard, right? Scoreboard's there. Everybody can see it. You don't need to hear it. So it's my job to find out what is going on, why. So I'm really intuitive and I ask questions. You guys know me. I ask tons of questions of, what's going on? Maybe there's things that I don't know. There's obstacles where I could remove them, or I can help be that liaison to, leadership, senior leadership, to say, hey, whoa, something's not right over here. And then you have the personal issues that get brought in. Right. We're humans. Yeah. And I think that's part of me. I'm an empath. I feel what you're feeling, Paul. Yeah. I feel what you're feeling. So from a young age, it's so crazy to me. I think back to this, like, I was always that person that people would call, tell their problems to. And I felt a very strong need to help them navigate through their situations. I can remember it being in 6th, 7th grade. Yep. My parents are from another country, as you know, and they had a hard life. When I think about, once I started learning about their stories and learning about just being in another country, coming here when they were teenagers and not knowing the language and having to start a life without your family, without anybody around. And I started learning a lot about their stories and just how resilient my parents really are. And as a young kid, my dad was hard on me. I'm not going to lie. He was hard. He was not your, lovey, empathetic father, right? He was hard on me. He pushed me. And I've said this story a couple times and it resonates. I played soccer when I was little, and I remember coming home from a game and I scored a goal. I'm like, Dad, I scored a goal. Like, I was all excited. And he's like, how many did the best player on the team score? Amanda Ward. How many did she score? And I'm like, 3. He's like, well, why didn't you score 3? And at the time as a kid, I was like, okay, all right. But I realized as I got older, he was always pushing me to do better. And, you have capabilities beyond what you probably think that you have. Right. And I always just had that in the back of my head, almost like at first it was a point to prove, right? Like I had a point to prove, like, don't tell me I can't do something. Don't do that.
Right.
But as I've gotten older, I've realized that every single day that comes at me, there's always a chance to be better at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, why am I settling for mediocre? Why? I'm never going to do that. It's just not going to happen. It's in me. It's
Right.
just not, it's not a thing. So I think it's just, I have this resiliency in the back of my head where, I have a tattoo on the back, on my back. And I went through some things a couple of years ago. And one of the things that it says is the sun will rise again.
Mm.
And when you think of all these dark moments that you've gone through your life or things that have happened to you, right? It's not going to stay dark the entire time, right? Sun always comes out.
Right.
These things are temporary.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how to move through them, right? Your life might look totally different. People that go through a medical illness, a death in the family, whatever it might be, your life might look totally different. But there's always going to be light at the end.
Right.
You'll find it.
Right. Which we're experiencing now with, for 4 years ago. I mean, to this date, today's the 15th. We all got sent home.
Yeah.
To this date.
Yeah.
And
don't bring the juju, Paul. Don't do that.
I think we all kind of sat down and we're like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And the world shuts down. We kind of all panicked. Obviously, things happened after the fact, unfortunately, to some folks. But again, you wake up and there's a new day.
Yeah.
And there's some beauty in that. To know that, I think about from a biblical perspective when we feel bad about certain things, again, from a biblical perspective for those who believe. I'm a believer, which we know.
Sure.
But God's mercy renews every day,
Mm-hmm.
So the shame that you felt yesterday is no longer the next day.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that same sentiment. The sun will rise tomorrow. It's funny because I would be like, if I'm having a bad day, and this is something but even back to when I was like 15, maybe 14, have a bad day or something didn't go the way I would like, or I was in the doctor's office for, I broke my nose when I was younger. I would always think, it's all right, Paul, you're going to wake up tomorrow. Yeah. And it would help me kind of navigate through it. So, absolutely. So another statistic that I saw, 92% of workers consider it very important to an organization that values their emotional and psychological well-being by creating a work-life balance. 77% of employees experience burnout at least once in their current jobs. Mm-hmm. You specifically, and then kind of for the team, for you specifically, how do you foster that work-life balance? You just came back from a beautiful trip in Florida. I think that's awesome. That to me, you value that. Yeah. So how do you kind of foster that? Yeah. So, interestingly enough, you see all these things where you have, people that are workaholics, right? Or they have, we need to separate this, need to separate that. I'll be honest, my business is a part of my life. Mm-hmm. It's a part of my life. Sure. It's a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. I love what I do. Right. I want to make an impact every day, yep. Right? It's also how I take care of my family. So my job is to manage all of it, right? I need to be there for my 3 kids. My husband needs me. My parents need me. My sibling, whoever it is, right? Mm-hmm. My friends. I got to manage that. And I have to all work that into each other, mm-hmm. because at the end of the day, my business is a part of my life. I don't have a set time where I shut my business down, Paul. Right. That doesn't work like that. Yeah. Just like if you called me at 2:00 in the morning and you needed something, I'm going to be there. Right. Just like if my mom needed me or somebody needed me. A lot of it is managing your time. Sure. That's difficult for people to do. They don't know how to manage their time appropriately. Right. And, something I learned early on is you have something in front of your face. All these tasks are coming at you at once. And you take a decision. Are you doing it right now? And if you're not doing it right now, you calendar it out. Right. And this happens with everything in my life, Paul. Everything. Yeah. If it's a kids conference, if it's a basketball game, something at work, I'm always intertwining it into what I do. Sure. And at the end of the day, if I'm sick, I'm sick. Everything can wait. Right. That goes for everything in my life. Absolutely. As far as the team, because I make such
close personal connections, I know when my team is burnt out. I know when somebody needs a break. And you know what? They are not going to perform well if they don't do that.
Right.
They need to take care of themselves. Right. And that's point blank. That's it.
Right.
We can always work on a different way to figure out how to get back to something. But if they need a break, they need a break.
Yeah. It's amazing to just hear what you say that, because it just goes back to what you just said in our previous segment, the sun will rise again.
Yeah.
And it's just, you foster that by letting them know, listen, it's going to be okay.
It's no big deal.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, whatever production numbers are, whatever they're going through, take a break, come back, recharge, and let's get after it.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you do like on a daily? Anything that you practice just to kind of make sure that your mind is right? Because, you know, our most important muscle is our brains. And, you know, what are things that you do to make sure that you're ready to roll?
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready for today's day.
So Paul, I'm gonna tell you a story here. And I feel very compelled to say this. So, you know this, a few years ago, I got really sick, really sick. I didn't know what was going on. I went to the doctor left and right. Nobody knew what was happening to me. I felt like I was dying. I was dry heaving every morning. I couldn't get out of my bed. It was awful. Panic, just straight panic. I got tons of blood work done. And one of the things that came back, my cortisol level was twice the number that it should have been. And the doctor called me right away and she's like, Jen, this is not good. You're like on the brink of having a heart attack. Wow. And I mean, I was in fight or flight, constant fight or flight. And it really exasperated from an illness, but it also exasperated from some traumatic things that I just bulldozed through. Yeah. Right. So you said that before, and it kind of made me think, I bulldozed through that, right? I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving. I can't stop standing, right? I got to keep moving. I have people that rely on me. And that was a pivotal moment in my life where I said, how did I get here? And I remember I was in my bed and I was inconsolable. And I think I might've been on the floor at this point. And my sister came in the house. She's probably never seen me like that. And she started crying and she looked at me and she said, Jen, like, I don't understand, like, what is going on? And she said, you know, she looked at me and she said, it's crazy because people that know you would never think that this would happen to you. And I remember I sat there and I'm like, it was just such a crazy moment in my life and a coworker said the same thing to me because I don't suffer in silence. I'll share my story, right? I don't care. And I said, why? You're always so put together. You always just seem like you're ready to go. And you just said it to me, right? You bulldoze through your walls. I'm going to get over that. But I'm human, Paul. I'm human, right? And that taught me I sought out a therapist. I sought out doctors, naturopaths, whoever it was. I was not stopping to listen. We all need support in our lives. And the therapist said to me, you know, after she heard my story, like, you absorb so much from everybody else. You're constantly trying to figure out how to navigate other people's lives. Who does that for you? And I sat there and I'm like, she goes, what do you do for yourself? Like, I get a pedicure? I don't know. Right? I don't know. What do I do? Yeah. So I started practicing a lot of different habits in my life that I changed. I exercise 5 times a week and I move my body 7 times. Yeah. It is one of the best things I could have done for myself. The endorphins that run through you, just all of the things that happen to your body. Like we are creatures that you look back thousands and thousands of years ago, we weren't sitting, right. We were moving, right? We need to move. Right. And that all affects your brain, my nutrition, my daily hydration. I know you hear that. People say that. My sleep, I prioritize my sleep. Good. Listen,
sleep is the best thing.
I'm not somebody that's going to get up at 5 a.m. and work out. I'm not.
I try to be.
I'll fit my workout in, but I'm not doing it at 5 a.m. Yeah. It's just not going to work for me, right? So I prioritize my sleep. I prioritize my nutrition, my movement every single day. I have support around me. Yeah. If I need a friend, if I need my therapist, I'm going to them.
That's huge.
Yeah.
When you think about these things, how do you navigate through setbacks? You know, we have the support, you know, you got your therapist, but there's still setbacks, right? There's still things that come through.
Yeah.
How do you navigate through that?
Yeah, I look at a setback as it's just a hurdle to find another solution, right? If I can't go right, I got to figure out if can I go left? Can I go up? Can I go down? Right.
Right.
I am constantly finding what's the solution? What's the next step? There's always a solution. There's always a way, right? I might need to look for support. I might need to call a friend. I might need to ask somebody like, hey, you did this, you came through this, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
I'm not, what are we going to do? I'm not sitting here and staying. I'm not stagnant. It's not going to happen. So for me, a setback is just a reroute. That's it.
We have about 15 minutes probably. So I just want to talk about the teams that you've built, and then the why behind your work a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll do some closing thoughts. I started in 2015 and it feels like, we're coming up on, it would have been 9 years. And I was extremely nervous because I was new to the industry. And I could remember, after getting licensed and all that good stuff, we used to talk about all the time. I would be afraid to make phone calls on the floor, and that stuck around for a while. And I remember when I first wrote my first policy, I was very anxious. I said to my wife Claire, I said, listen, I just took someone's bank account information and their social. I'm nervous, and so that stuck with me for a little while. But my question for you is, what have you learned along the way to make sure that you're going to collaborate, foster collaboration and trust within the team?
So it all goes back to communication, Paul. And I'm in the trenches. I'm with you guys. I'm listening. Yes. I'm hearing. Yeah. I'm constantly there. Right. So for me, it's constantly communicating. Hey, I can tell, right? I could tell in a heartbeat, you were anxious, you were nervous, you were timid, right? Yeah. It's me calling you out on that. Why? What's going on, right? Other people might dismiss that, might say, oh, Paul might get, better with time or whatever. But I think I'm very direct.
You push. You definitely were, it wasn't just settle with, oh yeah, you wrote one policy, or yeah, it was, well, like you said, what your dad would do is, why didn't you score 3 goals?
Yeah.
That's very much that.
Yeah. But I think it's more it goes back to, I'm asking lots of questions to really figure out root causes, right? So it's surface level, anybody can tell you an answer. Yeah. So for me, for my team, I'm very integrated with them. I'm integrated into everything that they're doing. So I feel, for me, that communication and that two-way trust, right? They trust me. Right. So, and at the end of the day, I'm not judging them. There's no judgment there. I'm their consultant. I'm here to help them thrive.
Right. What do you look for when you're building a high-performing team? What are you looking for, the type of person that you want to fit in?
Sure. I've learned this over the years. And it's something that you see, right? Just by the work that we do and seeing the types of people that come in, right? What I notice is that people that are loyal and committed to a process and to the vision and to you, that's number one. Right. It's that loyalty and that commitment. They're going to stick this out, even if things are bad or things are hard. Yeah. In our line of work, they have to have sense of urgency, right? My mom used to say to me when I was younger, you're so impatient. You want everything done yesterday. Well, it worked out here, right? It might have been annoying as a kid, but that's a big thing. It's people that constantly push for those results and that execution driven. And they do have to have self-drive and self-motivation. Nobody's going to do that for you, right? People that know how to be disciplined, that's a big one, right? Because all of these small habits and these small things are leading up to the result. That's what it does. Right. Not being able to brush your shoulder off and say, hey, all these no's that we take as salespeople, we're getting no's all day long. Yeah. You got to keep pushing through that because you're going to get a yes. Right. It will happen.
What are you most proud of your accomplishments here?
I'm most proud of the impact that I've made on people.
Because it goes beyond work.
Listen, I love money. I love the reco. I do. I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, I love, and you might ask me this question after, what's my why? And I might just tie it in, right? My why is growth. Yeah. It's seeing growth. Right. And I can honestly say that, yes, of course I want to take care of my family, but that's any job can take care of your family, right? My why and why I'm a leader and why why do I work with people and try to build them up is I see the growth in people.
Yeah.
I see people that started here and come here. Like that to me, I want people to look at me and say, because of you, I did that.
Right.
Because of you, I didn't give up.
Right.
It's an impact.
Right.
That's all I ask for.
Well, you just took that last part out of
I
my
did. Sorry. I'm always a step ahead, Paul.
That's all right. There's about 6 months ago or so, you recommended a book, UOU.
Yep.
And I live with the mantra that Eric Thomas, ever since you brought that to me, and you said you saw him in Chicago, I think, right?
Yeah.
And he said, discipline is inactive and absence of a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one mantra that you've shared with me that I always think of that. And whenever I'm like, oh, I'm coming up short on this, I'm like, be disciplined. I'm getting JF. I have JF in my head because you're telling me, I can hear you say that.
Yeah.
Outside of that mantra, is there anything else that you follow that is just, you want to make sure that you can either share with the team or you just repeat in your head, like, this is how I move forward?
Yeah. So with that mantra, he also said, God gives people gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize what their gifts are.
Right.
And for me, this is my gift.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
I know it. I feel it. It's like in me. Right. And what I go by on a daily basis and some of the things that I keep moving, right? It's a lot of these isms, like you have that ism, like
Sure.
discipline is inactive in the absence of a goal.
Mm-hmm.
The sun will rise again,
Mm-hmm.
right? It all encompasses back to resiliency,
right,
and being able to move forward when something gets set back your way, right? It's all comes back to that. And for me, I live by that. I own that. And I want people to make sure that they understand that, listen, what is the person to the right? What are they doing different than you? Who are they?
Right.
They're not.
Right.
You can do that and you can be that person too. You just have to find the path.
Yeah.
And you have to stick to the path.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, you'll get there.
Absolutely. Closing thoughts. What are, an aspiring 21-year-old jumps into the industry and they see leadership within themselves and their path. What advice do you have for them?
My advice is listen and learn as much as you can. And don't you always need to keep moving and work above,
Mm-hmm.
right? So talk to mentors, talk to other leaders and managers, take priority of yourself and take action. Don't be reactive and wait for something to come to you. If you want that, then you need to tell the people that are above you that you want that. And what do you need to do to get there? Right. That's a big thing, is that people are afraid, right? They sit there and they kind of just work through their job. No, like, you got to tell people what you're looking for and what you're willing to do. Right. And then you listen to them and you do it. Will
Smith said, he jumped out of a plane. He said, the greatest things in life are on the opposite side of fear. And I agree. When you just take that leap, and you push yourself through, and it goes back, we would talk about, being comfortable, we're wired to be comfortable. We don't want to do the painful things, fight or flight, right? Most of us are going to fight because we just go revert back to what's comfortable. Yeah. And I think what I've learned from you is get uncomfortable, get effing uncomfortable, and get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. So I appreciate you doing this with me. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy we did this.
I can't wait to hopefully maybe do another one down the road. We can, maybe talk some like reality TV, because I'm all about it.
Oh yeah, sure.
Jen, I appreciate it. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.